again for another set of thank yous, but I'm really glad to be invited to come here tonight, and I found it extremely interesting to listen to Grace and Sue and Tibor, and actually that sums up this process for me. When I was asked to be the juror, one of the three jurors, I was really pleased and excited, but because what those processes always allow me to do is to learn, and it allows me to discover, which I find I come back really invigorated to work on new projects and new things. And so coming into this panel was another sense of discovery for me. Tonight I'm just going to kind of talk quite freely about some ideas that I have about craft on the prairies and this show in particular. So let's start. Observations. These are the topics that I wanted to look at today. Adherence to function, the idea of function being solely the idea of art, the idea of materiality or media, conceptual practice, and then finally ending with something that excites me very much is the idea of expanding the definition of craft. Function continues, unsurprisingly, to be an underlying theme to the production of many craft artists, including those situated on the prairies. In this exhibition, you'll see a number of wonderful pieces that really fit within those lines of functionality. Mel Boland's piece, the glaze on this is fabulous. Bernard Bower's wonderful bowl here with its textures, and that just another object that you get immense pleasure from using. There's some great pieces of jewelry in the exhibition, and I brought in Beg and Hazel's here, which in another sense too, it was one of those ones where we looked at it, and I must admit my initial thought was it was rather large for a necklace. You gotta have some fun. Keith Oliver, I mean, to have a piece of furniture like this in my home, like it's so subtle, but everything is there, and you have the wonderful combinations of textures and materials and woods, from rather rough-hewn pulls on the drawers to this kind of very svelte and smooth covering. And then you get the working as, still I guess you could call it functional pieces if you think of them strictly as art as the function, and often having a narrative behind them, like Tibor's piece, which was great listening to you explain it, Tibor. Tibor received Best in Province. And Mary Beth wrote that this finely crafted object is rich in historical references to a pivotal Cold War event which brought Tibor and family to Canada as refugees from Hungary. She writes, I was intrigued by how this sculpture straddled the divide between fine craft and contemporary art. And I do think that divide is getting even less and less visible. Some really lovely fabric and textile works in this show. I was really taken by this one of Fractured Ice, though, by Barty Davidson. I love the even though it's untextured because it's cotton and rather flat, the printing that she did on it was very evocative to me of winter on the prairies. Jordan's piece, really very characteristic of his work. In Winnipeg here, is full of whimsy, and that idea of craft as sculpture in this part, so in this place, in this vehicle. And wall hangings are sort of two-dimensional pieces, so even though this is a rug from Nancy Hall, it's a wall hanging, it's not meant to be stepped on. And I love how she's using recycled fabrics for it and completely her own designing and process behind it, fully imaginative. And Robert Wilson's love this piece. It was honorable mention for Best Established Craft Artist. Such a sensual vessel to me. You have this incredible deep chocolate background, which I was fascinated to find out it's made from dark roast coffee. The idea of media I find to be very topical in craft, and this idea of using unexpected or combinations, found media, just not strictly sticking to the clay, glass, metal, or textile, but often weaving them all together in different ways. Teresa Burrow's piece is a fantastic example of that, using the caribou antlers that she was given with beading. I mean, her beading is just phenomenal. Young artists also exploring ideas of combination of materials, and Janaea Fritsch's warbler study. It's such a beautiful, beautiful little piece. And a combination of precious objects and non-precious objects. So wood here, along with vintage chains and sterling silver. This was one of those discoveries for me. I didn't know Christian Barr's work before this process. I love the landscape on the side of it, the idea of a sort of a raven rum jug, and the use of the elk horn as the handle. I just found it a very striking piece, and I don't think it would be as striking without that elk horn handle that just adds something by the mixture of textures and mediums. This was a piece that the jurors were quite excited about too, because it was completely unexpected, and going back to that idea of unexpected media. The Pysanka mosaic, if you have a chance, go look at it. It's quite exquisite, and it's so complex and rich in its imagery, and all from these sort of shattered Pysanka eggs. And so that idea of encountering something completely unexpected within craft is always something that's inherent in the field, I think. Conceptual practice is an area that seems to be growing and growing and growing. Matt Gould's Italianate received for Best Mid-Career Artist, and Matt speaks in his statement about challenging stereotypes and perceptions of what is not acceptable for sort of a male artist to produce. And he works with fabrics and stitches and embroidery, and he also has that eroticism present in the Italianate, speaking about homosexual affairs and love, and so he mixes all this sort of conceptual ideology behind the piece as well. It's a really fascinating, and again, it was quite an unexpected piece for me in this show, and I was really glad to see it come in. Grace's pieces, that idea of the environment and the idea of place and location in her work, and so much more than beyond vessel, but speaking more about greater ideas. Catherine Koop's Fantastic Sisters, which received for Best Established Artist. So here we have a series of what you could call vases, but they've all been so personalized and given that personality and spirit, and evocative of the body, of the head, the shoulder, the hips as they dance. It's hard to see this piece without having that idea of the body behind it. Zane Wilcox, another surprise for me, someone else who I wasn't familiar with, received for Best in Province in Saskatchewan. I love this piece, the idea of the vessel deconstructed. So it's exhibited upstairs, as you will see on the left, but it comes apart, as you see on the right. So the idea of the vessel that's not a vessel, and taking apart exactly what is a vessel, and then displaying it very didactically what it is to be not a vessel. John Chalk, always evocative about landscape and about the idea of crust uncurling, I think about, because much of his work has to do with sort of the surface and the ground, and the idea of forces and nature's forces, and whether it's earthquakes or mountains building in near where he lives in Alberta or whatever, but that sort of very ground base idea of a natural force unfurling in this work. Mariko McRae, I love this piece. The little top golf shoes with the Nike emblem, you know, all about pop culture. And here we have Louis XIV's or 50s, God knows, shoes, all decked out with pop culture references, and the blue and white porcelain that was so big and in the trade of the 19th century. Just so many puns and wit and layers of historicism attached to them. Where do I see craft going? And again, extremely personal observation. One of the artists I'm including is Cal Lane. She's not Prairie. She's originally Victoria. I'm not sure exactly where she is right now, but doing these exquisite works from wrought iron, steel, sort of material that has had a very heavy industrial, sort of dirty life prior to her manipulating it into absolute objects of beauty. And so I see, you know, new ideas in medium, new ideas of process, new ideas of material entering into the field. A lot of work on installation. This is going back to Teresa Burrow's work. A few more pieces of hers that goes along with the hat that's in the exhibition here from her Caribou Women's series, working with photographs as well, so it's interdisciplinary. A lot of more craft artists I find are working interdisciplinary, which I find really exciting. But also thinking not of just a piece, but of a place, and how it sits, how that work works in the place, and how it's as much about the space around it as it is about the object. And I've seen that sort of shift in the last, say, 10 years. Grace's piece I bring in exactly for that idea of working on the idea of the installation and the sort of group of objects, which you see more and more happening. This I went and saw it at U of M, and I thought it was absolutely beautiful. Greg Pace, another artist from Alberta, from Calgary. You probably know his ceramics, where he has his arborelli in large vases, and then it's as much as I said about the space around. If you look in between them, you see the figure of the human being. He works with the sort of void as well, but he's now superimposing them with video and shooting his own videos, and so it's becoming new media work as well, using the craft as the base. But you know, one thing on the prairies is I found that there's a lot of passion on the prairies in the arts, a lot of drive, and if you have drive and if you have passion, you'll find a way. And I'm going to end with Ion's piece here, Governor General Award winner for 2010, in a prairie that has no glass in its sort of production history, and yet there is a way. So I encourage you all to keep producing and keep creating, because it's food for people like me. So thank you.